In this video, we're going to look at a brief history of native advertising from the earliest types of native adverts that I found all the way up to the most recent modern incarnations that we're interested in. This is useful because we can draw similarities between the different mediums and the time zones to understand how best to implement native adverts. Native adverts have changed a lot over the years. But it's good to know that they've been around for a long time, and it's good to know how we can implement them. So in the beginning, well, okay, so maybe there weren't native ads as long as there've been people. Certainly we haven't seen native ads in cave paintings, we don't know, and they probably weren't eating a McDonald's at the same time. But it's good to know that native ads have actually been around for a long time. The earliest native ad I found was from 1873, which is Jules Verne, the legend of science fiction, who wrote Around the World in 80 Days. And in this book there was 2 plugs which he did receive payment for, which were for travel companies. They were for the Peninsula and Oriental travel companies, where he pimped 2 of their boats and 2 of their journeys that they travelled. There we go, Jules Verne, native ads, 1873. Let's fast forward a bit to 1914, and this is probably one of the best pieces of writing I've ever read, actually, and it's The Penalty of Leadership by Cadillac, or an advert for Cadillac that appeared in the Saturday Evening Post. You can see that the only mentions, if you read it, the only mentions of Cadillac are in the border, in the ellipse at the top and at the bottom in the centre there. That entire passage doesn't mention Cadillac directly, but it talks about the difficulties of being a forerunner, of being out in front and the best in your field, which was a fantastic piece of writing, because by virtue of it being there, people associated it with Cadillac, and it literally says that if you are the best in your field, then you will face criticism. And it turned around people's opinions of Cadillac and turned them from a struggling company pretty much into a hugely successful company. I'm just going to read the first line because I think it is pretty immense. It says, "In every field of human endeavour, he that is first must perpetually live in the white light of publicity." It's fantastic. It's a great piece of writing. I really recommend you reading it. And then let's fast forward to 1920s and the moving pictures. This is Wings. Look at that. This is a blatant plug for Hershey's chocolate here. What's that? Oh, it's a pair of socks. Let me pick those up. Oh, here's your book. And I just can't stop looking at that bar of chocolate. It's a bit blatant. It's a bit crass. I suppose they didn't really have sound back then. But there we go. Hershey's chocolate. I actually had no ideas that Hershey's had been around that long, so I was surprised when I found that. But as long as there's been moving pictures, there's been adverts in them. In the 1940s, there was a lot of branded and sponsored radio stations. This one was a poster for Burns and Allen's Maxwell House Time. It was, their plugs weren't that subtle. Quite often throughout the show, someone might go, I fancy a Maxwell House coffee, or this doesn't taste as smooth as the granules of Maxwell House, or something like that. But at the time, it was said that radio stations couldn't support themselves, so they formed sponsorship deals and ran ad spots, and this was it, right? But this is native advertising. It was a show on the radio which follows the format of that show. It just happens to be associated with a particular product, and that's how native advertising works. And then in 1951, this is the Guinness Guide to Oysters, which is widely accepted as one of the best native adverts of all time. Fantastic piece of advertising. The only mention of Guinness is at the top in the name, Guinness Guide to Oysters, and the picture of the Guinness in the bottom right hand corner. And the rest of the poster is literally a guide to oysters. It suggests obviously that oysters go well with Guinness. I personally prefer champagne with mine, but there we go. But it's a fantastic piece of writing and value, and something that people would put up in their shops or put up in, on their walls, and it demonstrates value as it provides information about oysters, but also happens to advertise the product of Guinness as well. And Then in the 1960s and 70s, with the rise of televisions in the home and sitcoms and television shows, some of these shows were sponsored, and also the TV ads to help pay for the stations and the programming. So this is a picture here is from Mr. Ed, which was a show about a talking horse, and it was the first few shows were sponsored by Studebaker's Automobiles, which is a car manufacturer. And then also around the same time they invented TV ads, which were they would have pauses or breaks in the TV show and run 2 to 3 minute adverts, which again are native ads, because all a TV advert is a very condensed, very short film. It just happens to be advertising a particular product, but the best ones tell stories, and the ones that get shared provide some emotional value, or they make people laugh, or they make people excited or interested. So TV ads are native ads. Moving on from the 70s to the 80s and the rise of Hollywood, I've chosen E.T. for this one, and Reese's Pieces is probably the first plug, or one of the first sort of big movies to do product placements and really plug different products, particularly the scene where Elliot, the kid from E.T., is enticing E.T. to follow him by placing Reese's Pieces down on the floor. Fantastic. Who would have thought extraterrestrials were into Reese's Pieces? Fantastic piece of native advertising. And now, of course, movies are just chock-a-block with these product placements and subtle adverts. And then we're going to skip all the way through to well, we're going to stay in the 1980s, and we're going to look at MTV, the rise of MTV and music videos again, more native ads. But this one in particular is a native ad because it's called My Adidas by the band De La Soul, and they literally just talk about their Adidas trainers throughout this entire advert. Now, the band say that they weren't paid for it originally, but they certainly received some sponsorship deals afterwards. But again, native adverts, and this certainly started a lot of people talking about products and talking about adverts. It still happens now. Native adverts, right? Follows the same form and media and function as the media that it's appearing in. And then we skip through to the 1990s and the 2000s, and we have the rise of Google and search ads. Now, the ads down the right-hand column, they're ad placements. It's not really native as such, because they're sponsored links that people sort of ignore, banner style. But the results at the top there, the sponsored links in the yellow faded box, well, they're native ads. They follow the same form and function as the rest of the page. They're appearing in the same flow as the rest of the page. They're native ads. And other media as well in the 1990s, 2000s, there was a massive rise in chat shows. They've been going for a while, but a chat show where they have celebrities on television, they come and they talk about their lives and other things, but they also talk about a product that they're existing in. Well, that's a native ad. And then there was the rise of bloggers. They would talk about products they would use. They would sell products, talk about things. That's native ads. And podcasts, the rise of podcasts in the recent years. Again, people talking about the products that they use and they sell, or even talking about products on their podcast directly. That's native adverts. So we're surrounded by native adverts. And then sort of in the last 5 years or so, we've seen the rise of sponsored content. I think BuzzFeed was like a primary player in this, placing adverts in the streams, in the regular sort of news streams. And we've seen an explosion of native networks with their widgets, such as Taboola, and this one on the screens from Gravity and Rev Content and the rest of them. And then, of course, publications and publishers have done their own native adverts, which appeared on the front of magazines, Forbes magazine. I remember there was a native ad ran for Scientology, which came under a lot of criticism. And so native ads they're just all around us, and they've been with us for as long as they've been product. And it seems that what's consistent about a native ad is that it has to seamlessly fit into the medium that it's appearing in, and also add some value to the people who are seeing it and reading it. And there we go. So that's the brief history of native ads. In the next video, we're going to look at the modern day variety of native ads and explore what they are. So I'll see you in that video.